Okay, hello, everybody. If you could do me a favor, please, and as I get myself organized here, if you could just let me know if you are watching on Zoom in the chat box or the Q&A box that you can hear me, and where you are listening from, that would be great. And if you're watching me on YouTube, if you could just put that in the chat box that you can hear me and where you're watching from, that would be great too. And we'll get started in just a second. Happy Wednesday for everybody, middle of the week. So let's go. And please, if you have any questions for me, put them in the chat box as well, or the Q&A box as well, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So let's get started. Let's go have some fun. And the first question I have is here's my question for you. This is a long question, by the way. Maybe I'll just break it up and answer each piece, and then by the way, thanks for all the people that are watching. Looks like we got people all over the world: Kuwait, California, all over the United States, in Europe. I see. That's fantastic. So multiple continents, multiple states. I love it. So let's go with that first question again. And again, if you have questions for me, please put them in the chat box or the Q&A box, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. So let's get started with our first question. Please, what are your recommendations? Companies/startups should absolutely join accelerators in order to raise funds. Okay, so if you're going to go join an accelerator, it seems like it's kind of funny. Almost every week I get the same questions asked, similar questions asked every week. So accelerators, there are tons of accelerators around the world now. There are some that are good, there are some that are not good. It's always kind of like anything else in life. It's buyer beware. So if you're going to go do one of these things, look at the recommendations for them, look at how good they are, look at how much they're really going to help you. I mean, that's the thing. So if I'm looking at, what's the best of the best, that should be obvious. Y Combinator is by far the best of the best. That's the one, to go to. That's the one. Sure, something there. So, anyways, that's the one to do. That's the one that you want to that you want to that you want to get into if you can. Y Combinator, by far the best of the best. That's the one where whatever equity you give up, because typically the deal is, I don't know whether they, some pay you money, to be there, some give you a stipend. Usually there's some equity that you give up. And the reality is, in the bigger picture of life, the equity that you give up probably isn't going to matter to you if the company is successful. So I really wouldn't worry about that a huge amount. What I would worry about if it was me is I would worry about the quality of the group that I'm working with. Are they really going to help you? Are they really going to move your company forward? Et cetera. That's what I'm looking at, when I'm joining these. So that's why I'm saying Y Combinator, best of the best. The rest, buyer beware. And look, as you would expect, the competition to get into any one of these top accelerators is fierce, which is the same for raising money. It's just not, people don't just throw money at you. It's not a given that you're going to be able to raise money. So I hope that helps in terms of what to do. So let's see something here. Okay. Sorry, I just want to get something up to date here. There we go. Okay, so the next question we have. Let me follow up the second part of this question here. Can I go solo to meet direct investors directly and pitch? Absolutely. That is the tried and true way of doing things. So if you want to build out a list of investors, which I would recommend that you do anyways, because you're going to need to do this at some point your work. So absolutely positively build out a list of investors and try and see if you can get introductions to them one way or the other. There are two ways to do it. You can do warm introductions, which is the best way to do it because you're going to have the best chance of success. And warm introduction is somebody that you know knows somebody at the fund, the family office, the hedge fund, the bank, whatever it is that can introduce you, which is always a great way to go. Cold introduction means you don't know anybody. And how are you going to get a meeting? And there are ways to do this. In fact, a little bit of self-promotion here, but my video tomorrow that I'm going to release tomorrow at probably 9 a.m. Wow, yeah, I will do it at 9 a.m. I'm going to do that at 9 a.m. Just realized I'm going to be on a plane, but that doesn't matter. So anyways, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 noon Eastern time. You can translate that across the world. I think that is 5 o'clock in the UK, 6 o'clock Central Europe, 7 o'clock in the Middle East. My latest video will come out, and it's all about cold emails and how to do them right, how to do them wrong. Okay, so let's go to the other questions that we have. If you have questions for me, again, if you're watching on Zoom, put them in the chat box or put them in the Q&A box. Chat box is preferred. If you are watching on YouTube, you can just put them in the chat box for me. Let's go to our next question. Next question is, I have a startup and I need help with the business plan and pitch deck. Also preparation for investor meetings coming up in February. Can you help or recommend a mentor? Okay, well, if you want me to help you, there are multiple ways you can do this. By the way, you do not need in today's world a business plan. That is, nobody reads 30-page business plans, nor would I recommend writing one in today's world. It's just a waste. Pitch deck is your business plan. Smartest way you can do it because everybody needs a pitch deck. And throughout the life of your company, you'll be pitching people all the time. This is what I find. You say, well, I'm not raising money. Doesn't mean you're not pitching. Gotta hire people. You're pitching them. You got to meet with your landlord. You're pitching the landlord, and why should they allow you to lease their building? Vendors, you've got to pitch them. It just goes on and on and on. You're always pitching. So it's good to have an up-to-date pitch deck, and that's what you want to do. So anyways, that's the first part of that question. The second part, if you want to work with me from most expensive to cheapest, most expensive is go to my website, www.brettjfox.com, click on coaching or click on Zero to Pitch. And there will be a link there where you can apply to work with me one-on-one. That's quite expensive. And I'll ask you a bunch of questions and we can understand whether or not it fits. I only work with a select small group of people one-on-one. That is one way to work with me. The other way to work with me is my community of startup CEOs, Zero to Pitch. I'm going to go most expensive to cheapest. Cheapest, which is free, is Zero to Pitch. And you can click on, in fact, there should be a link below today's video and on my YouTube page for Zero to Pitch. It's a free community for startup CEOs aimed at helping CEOs grow their businesses and raise money. Community is now over 1,000 strong in the community. You get free lifetime access. Click on the link, answer a few questions, and you're in. And you get access to these types of things. Ask me anything. I do pitch deck reviews in there once a month, only for my Zoom audience, by the way, not for my YouTube audience. So if you want me to review your pitch deck, I do those once a month. In fact, I'm going to do it next week at this time. And I post those in the community as well, so you can review them and kind of see what goes on. Great way to get some help. And I don't review, I maybe review 5 pitch decks a month. That's it. So that's one way to do it. The other way is join the paid community that I have, which is Zero to Pitch Gold. The price is $99 a month for that. You can stop anytime you want. There's also a free 14-day money-back guarantee. And in there, you get to work with me back and forth. So if you kind of contrast today, we're in a webinar setting. You're asking questions in a webinar setting, written questions, and I'm responding. There's a limitation to what I can do in this setting. However, in Zero to Pitch Gold, we have office hours every day. And I vary the time of the office hours so I can work with people around the world. And in office hours, you can ask me any questions. We review pitch decks, we review pitches, we answer questions on being able to help people in there. So you have that, plus you have courses you can take about how to pitch your business better, et cetera. So that's $99 a month. Or if you want 1 year access, that costs $999. There's a 14-day money back guarantee for whatever reason. You don't like what you're seeing, it's just not for you, whatever it might be. That's cool. Not a problem. Just send me a note and say, hey, Brett, not for me, and I'll refund your money, no questions asked. The other thing is to note that January 1st, they will be raising the price of Zero to Pitch Gold. So if you want to join, now's the time. So that's what I would suggest. Okay. My next question, if you have questions for me, you can leave them in the chat box on Zoom or the Q&A box on Zoom for my Zoom audience, or you can put them in the chat box on YouTube. Next question is, how do I find the investor's contact information? Oh, that's fairly straightforward. Give you a couple things to do, and I'll give you a slight pro tip in here too. So we can find contact information by going to the investor's website. Typically, they will have email addresses on there. That's one way to do it. You can use a tool like crunchbase.com, which you should be able to find investors. Sometimes they have addresses there. You could go to LinkedIn and message people through LinkedIn. That's yet another way. Or I guess I'll give you the pro tip. The pro tip is you can use this tool, hunter.io, and pretty much find anybody's email address in the world. And that's a great way to do it. And it's a free tool, by the way. So try it. So anyways, those are the options for you. Hope that helps. Next question. If you have questions for me, put them in the chat box on Zoom or YouTube, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Next question. Hi, Brett. Thanks for all the free advice. You're welcome. I have a pre-seed, pre-launch startup. It is very science heavy with a lot of hardware and chemistry involved. Boy, that sounds familiar. My team currently consists of 8 scientists. That's pretty good. Pretty cool, by the way, too. And together we developed our technology over 9 years with me investing about $500,000. We are pursuing venture funding. We pitched 6 VCs so far. Okay, I'm almost betting what I'm going to hear next. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, they all loved the company, but every single one disqualified us because they didn't like the fact that it took us so long to make. What do they expect? Not everything is a simple app or software. Okay, it doesn't seem like there's a question there. Maybe there is somewhere in here. Well, let me answer that piece, and I'll go to the last piece of what you wrote. So everybody's going to have a different opinion. People will say no for various reasons. Who knows why? If you're hearing the same thing, I will be honest with you. 9 years is a long time, and it's an is right. Some people will like it, some people won't. But I totally understand, and I can understand why, because what they're hoping is that in a year or 2 years, which would be a typical time period, you're able to build out your proof of concept or your first article or your first product that you were going to sell or something. 9 years is a long time, and what they're worried about is maybe it's going to take you 9 more years, to get from point A to point B. So what you have to do when somebody says that to you is you have to honestly look at yourself rather than blaming them. Because I think they're giving you fair commentary, whether you like it or not, is rather than blaming them. You have to say, okay, this is where I'm at. Maybe not tell people it took you 9 years to get from point A to point B. That might be a piece of advice I might give you. Nobody's going to know. It doesn't matter. You don't have to tell them. If they ask you, I would be honest, in terms of the time period. But you have to be able to say, look, now that we're at this point, we're going to be able to go from point B to point C much faster. And your plan hopefully is indicative of that you're going to very quickly get to market. You're very, very quickly going to do things. Without knowing more, what I would tell you is that it would worry me, just like it's worrying them. How long is it going to take you? The other thing that would worry me, and I don't know whether they said something like this to you as well, is that there's this classic thing about traction in businesses. And hardware businesses, look, I come from the hardware world. I spent most of my career in hardware, so I understand the challenges of it. But having said all of that, and I've worked with several hardware startups, the thing that we all did, including myself, is you keep lessening risk. And you want to find ways to lessen risk. By the way, this is true for everybody listening. If you're thinking about put yourself in the investor shoes, they're going to give you a lot of money. What can you do to reduce the risk? Well, even for hardware companies, if we can prove something in software that proves out the hardware, that's great. I think every week I've gotten a question like this, and every week I've given the same example. There's a company I'm working with worth now, I think, $1.6 billion. I've been working with him since day -1. In other words, even before the company started, I was working with the CEO. And hardware, really tough space to be in. And what did he do as his first step? He proved it out in software. And even if the software isn't perfect, you can do a hell of a lot. And that allowed him to get to the next step and get more money to prove out the next step and the next step after that. And now look at them. $1.6 billion. They'll probably IPO in 2 years. And my guess is they might IPO at over 10 billion. Food for thought. So let's take a look at what the rest of your questions are. Okay, so by the way, during R&D, our prototype generated profitable $800,000 in revenue. That's great. For many customers, including Fortune 500 companies, universities, and celebrities. Fantastic. VCs didn't care. They didn't like the development time. So the question is, are there VC investors who don't mind working with capital-intensive scientific companies? The answer is yes. There are. I just gave you an example of one. There are other people out there too. That might be the problem, by the way, in your particular case. It is a hunting expedition when we are trying to find investors. You have to find the match. Not all investors are created equal. Not every investor is going to be the appropriate investor for your startup. That's kind of the comment I would have. And without being able to understand more about what you're doing and who the investors are, you want to find the appropriate investor. So if you're trying to get somebody that invests exclusively in software to invest in your hardware company, it's just not going to happen. So you have to find investors that have invested in your space. The best tool for this, if you're starting from scratch, is Crunchbase.com. You can find a group of investors there, do the digging, do the research, find out that they actually invest in your space. Smartest thing in the world you can do. And that's really going to help you in terms of what you're trying to do. And hopefully from that, you can build out a list. Then you have to think about, what are you doing? And how are you going to make your message strong enough so that investors buy into it? There are no magic bullets here. That's what I can tell you. But you can make it work. I understand the concern, but you can make it work. Sometimes if you know there's a big issue, get out in front of the issue and own it. It's the other comment I would have for you. Okay. Next question on the list. By the way, if you have questions for me, put them in the chat box on Zoom or the Q&A box on Zoom for my Zoom audience. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can put them in the chat box on YouTube. The next question is, are there VC investors who don't mind? Oh, I think I just answered this question. Okay, sorry. Wrong question. I have a pre-seed startup in the industry of robotic assisted surgery. That sounds really interesting. I am currently looking for investors, but my only strategy at the moment are cold pitches through LinkedIn, email, or inquiries on Rocket Carpenter. I'm not familiar with Rocket Carpenter, okay? For an AI clinical note generation startup with an initial $1 million valuation. How much equity should be allocated for a family and friends round? Thanks so much for your amazing channel. Well, I hate to say it, but I'm a little confused at what you're asking. Maybe it's my own ignorance, so I apologize in advance. How much money are you trying to raise? That's what I would ask you. I don't understand your valuation, where you got your valuation from, because typically investors set the evaluation. Now, if you're raising an early stage round, friends and family, and let's say you're raising like $100,000 or something like that, and we're raising $100,000, we're going to get our friends and family to invest. That typically is going to be, maybe you're going to give up 10% of the company for that, and then you're at your $1 million valuation, I would say, post money. So that's probably where you're going to end up. But how much money are you trying to raise? That's the answer to the question. So I'm going to assume it's 100,000. It's probably, if you're in that 100,000-ish range of money, then you want to give up about 10% of the company for that. The $1 million valuation, I don't even understand how you came up with that. I did a video on valuations, and it's worth watching in terms of how investors think about valuations. Okay, next question. A VC's website. I have done my due diligence and researched each investor in VC to make sure that my company fits their portfolio. Okay. I'm having a hard time not getting discouraged as I haven't received very many responses. Any advice? Okay, so it sounds like you're doing cold. Your way of getting to investors is cold emails. Okay, so as I said, I've got to, without reading what you've done, my guess is probably in your, if you're not getting any responses and nobody's responding to what you're sending them, then my guess is it is in what you're sending them, which is fairly obvious. So watch my video tomorrow that's coming out on this exact subject. Maybe it'll give you some insight into how to do this better. That's the best I can do without really digging in. It sounds like you're in an interesting space. So I would think that there would be investors that would be interested in what you're doing. But it could also be you're too early for them too. This is the other thing. In today's world, sometimes, whether we like it or not, we need traction. It's hard to raise money without traction. It's been done. I've done it. Other people I know have done it, but it's super hard to do it. So without knowing more, I would say, it's probably in what you're sending people, or it's that you're just way too early, or you're asking for something that's just inappropriate at the stage of company you're at. Okay, let's go to the next question. Okay, AK said, you said if building hardware is expensive, make software. No, I didn't say that. Okay, so let me answer the first part of your question. I'll answer the second question for you. No, what I said was, if you need to prove your hardware, and we're in an early stage and you're in a capital intensive business, which by definition hardware is, prove your hardware in software. Do simulations of your hardware in software. Almost everything that you do in hardware can be simulated in software. And if we can prove that our software works, the software version of our hardware works, that may fund us to the next stage of our development to get more money to prove out our hardware. That's what I said, just for context. Okay, next part of your question. Since the software market is competitive, how can you differentiate yourself and grow rapidly? Context for you. I'm building a health tech startup that aims to help people live longer by changing their daily habits. Okay, that's fantastic. Congratulations. What's unique about you? What's different about you? What are you bringing to the table that nobody else is? What's your key insight? Every business that is big is typically competitive. There are no free lunches. So I'm not so worried about the fact that you're in a competitive business. I think that's just fine. Great, you're in a competitive business. It does not matter, but find ways to differentiate yourself. Look, to go back to the company I was talking about earlier, the company that's worth 1.6 billion. In the space that this company is in, when they got funded, there were 50 other companies funded by VCs in the space, way overfunded space. You see this a lot in big spaces, in hot spaces, that there's kind of like this herd mentality and too much investment. A lot of the companies go away. This company in this very competitive space, rather than having a brute force solution, had a very, what I'm going to call, elegant solution to the problem. Totally different than everybody else's in the space. Still is. Only company technically doing it the way that they're doing it. And they have done fabulous because they had a unique solution that proved out to be correct, proved out to be value added, proved out to be really elegant. Bully for them. So find ways to be unique, find ways to be differentiated. So what? There's a lot of competition. In one sense, you can learn from your competition in terms of what are they doing right, what are they doing wrong, and find ways to carve yourself out and be different. When we think about very successful companies, I'll give you a couple examples of this. When we think about search, for example, we think about Google. Was Google the first search engine? There were plenty that came before Google. They just had a very unique way of doing it. When we think about social media and we think about Facebook, they were not the first company to do what they were doing. There were plenty of others that came before them. They just had a better way to do it. What's your better way going to be? That's the answer. Okay, next question that we have on our list. So if you have questions for me, you can put them in the chat box if you're watching on Zoom, or the Q&A box on Zoom. If you're watching on YouTube, you can put them in the chat box on YouTube. And just as a, since we're at the bottom of the hour here, a free, a shout out to things that you can do with me. If you want to go further, you can join my free group for startup CEOs, Zero to Pitch. It is absolutely free. You can become a member for life. It's over 1,000 members and growing right now. You get tons of advice on there, some mini courses on there that you can do. There should be a link below this video. There's a link on my YouTube page for Zero to Pitch. Answer a few questions and you're in. And you're free for life. And then if you like that, you can join my paid group, Zero to Pitch Gold, as well. Price is going up January 1st. It's $99 a month right now. So if you want in, and you can quit anytime you want, there's a 14-day money back guarantee, and you get a hell of a lot more there. And you can kind of find out more about that before joining as well. So let's go to our next question. I am in seed. What is that? I am in seed phase invested $200,000 for 2 years, and I have my MVP. I don't know whether that means you've gotten seed stage investing already. Okay, you have your MVP. How can I get funding without traction yet? And how can I evaluate the company? And what percentage can I give for a $1.6 million ask? Okay, if we're going to raise $1.6 million, it's a pretty reasonably large amount of money. I don't know whether that's the right amount or not, but I'm going to assume for the sake of our discussion that it is. You're probably entering the realm of venture capital, or perhaps angel investing, or we're starting to get up to there. Angel investing, definitely, maybe venture capital. You're kind of between the two. It feels like to me as I'm listening to this. So I'm going to say something. This is not Shark Tank. We do not set valuations, or we shouldn't be setting valuations when we're dealing with these types of investors. The market sets the valuation. You can try. And I know there are people out there that recommend, you should set the valuation, make it easier for the investors. I 100% disagree with that. The market sets the valuation. And if you think about it, and let me explain why I think I'm right. Investors do this all day, every day for a living. They understand how to value companies. You don't. Maybe the first time you've ever done this in your life, maybe the second time you've ever done this in your life, you're at a massive disadvantage. And there are 3 possible things that can happen. If you think about this, if you set the price, you can get it wrong, you can be too high, and you can scare investors away. You can be too low and potentially leave money on the table. Those are 2 things. Third thing is you get it right. So you got about a 1 out of 3 chance of getting it right. Instead, let the market determine the valuation. If they ask you, say, look, I'm raising 1.6 million. Say, what's the valuation? You say, we're going to let the market determine the valuation. They'll know exactly what you mean. So I think you're making it too hard on yourself personally. Let the investors go first. They say, well, we really want to know what you think. Do your research. Understand that typically if you're raising 1.6 million, that's probably you're going to give up 20 to 30% of the company, I would guess. But you can do some research and find out what other people in your space have gotten. Probably you can do that. If not, then you would say, look, I've seen companies in my space get this type of deal for this amount. And you give a range. That's what I would do. But that's me. You do it your way. But that's the way I would do it personally. Okay, so if you have any questions for me, put your questions in the chat box if you're watching on Zoom, or the Q&A box if you're watching on Zoom, or the chat box if you're watching on YouTube. All right, let's go to our next question. All right, we work on empowering real physical art community by comparing Web 2 and 3 for authenticity. Okay, it's a follow-up to the previous question. Okay, let me just drink some water if you don't mind. Okay, and let's go to our next question. How do you go about, from your first 15 customers, friends, family, and their friends, to your first 100 without marketing? Should that also be manually done? Okay, this is actually a fantastic question. So the answer is I can't answer your question directly. And let me explain why. I don't know your business. I don't know the specifics of the particulars, your price point, the marketing channels that you have available to you, et cetera. I can give you a methodology and a recommendation of what to do. You're thinking about this, if this makes you feel better, I think you're thinking about this the right way. Is okay, and this is kind of the way I think about businesses too, actually, is I think about it as, how do I get my first initial group of customers? Around 10 or so. You got to 15, fantastic. Now, because I'm an engineer and I'm always kind of thinking numbers and engineering, is the way I think about things. It's like, okay, and I'm thinking logarithmically. It's like, okay, how do I go from 10 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, so forth and so on? Is okay, great. How do we get to the next, in your case, 85 customers and get to 100? So how do we get to 100 customers? So this is the question, and there's a ton of different ways to do it. And I can't answer the question directly because, yes, you should continue doing what you're doing is one part of this. So keep using your personal network, keep doing these non-scalable things, which is fantastic. Now, how do we kind of build bridge that gap between where you can get to with your network versus getting all the way to 100? Here's my recommendation. Buy the book Traction by Gabriel Weinberg. It answers this question directly. It's a very easy weekend read. Buy it today. By Monday, you can have read the book and you'll understand the methodology of what to do, and you can be off and running. That's what I would recommend. It's really nicely done. It's really simple. Weinberg, by the way, he is CEO of a company called DuckDuckGo, which is a alternative website to Google. And they've been around for a while. So I like his methodology. It's logical to me and makes sense. So I would use that as my way of going at this. All right, next question on our list. How should early stage startups prioritize raising funds and focusing on customer acquisition when both seem critical to growth? This is another really good question that I like. Okay. The answer is probably not going to be very fulfilling or happy to you, but here's the answer. As startup CEOs, our job is not easy. And, this is why you want to raise enough money so you're not in perpetual fundraising mode, because if you don't raise enough money, you're constantly having to raise money. Now, having said that, you're in this place, you got to go raise money. We all have to raise money, usually for a long period of time in our company's life. So what does that mean? What do you prioritize? Here's where it's not going to be very fulfilling. You got to do both. You have now 2 jobs. 2 full-time jobs, probably more than that, but at least 2. You are now the CEO. Got to run the company on a day-to-day basis. You got to do all that stuff. And guess what? Your other job is you are the chief fundraiser of your company. Congratulations. You got to do that too. So you have to do both. That's the answer to your question. I know that's probably not what you wanted to hear, but that's just the reality of it. You have to do both. You have to find a way. Pain in the rear end, but this is just life, and this is just business, and this is what we have to do as CEOs. So I know that wasn't going to be fulfilling for you, but that's the answer. Okay, questions for me, put them in the chat box on Zoom or Zoom or the Q&A box if you're watching on Zoom for my Zoom audience. And for YouTube, my YouTube audience, put them in the chat box on YouTube. And for my YouTube audience, if you're not already a member of my free group, Zero to Pitch for Startup CEOs, you can do that quite easily. There should be a link below this video. There is a link on my YouTube site as well for Zero to Pitch. It is free for life. All you have to do is just answer a few questions, and then you're admitted and you're in for life, and you get all the benefits of being inside that group, including free courses and the ability to work with other CEOs like you. And then I answer questions as well. And then once a month, I do free pitch deck reviews for just the Zero to Pitch community as well. So you get a lot of value from that. If you want to take it to the next level, you can join my paid community, Zero to Pitch Gold. Costs $99 a month. Currently, the price is going up January 1st. And in there, you get a lot more ability to work with me, than you do here, in my Ask Me Anything sessions. I have daily office hours. And unlike this format, which is webinar, it is a Zoom format, a Zoom meeting format. So you actually get to talk to me, work with me directly on your pitch deck, whatever else is going on with your business. There are courses in there which can augment the live training that I do as well. So that's a really good value for $99 a month. Or if you want to do that and get 1-year access, that is $999. And with that 1-year access, which by the way, you get 2 months free if you're doing the math, you also get a free one-on-one meeting with me. Not bad. So that one-on-one meeting, by the way, if I do one-on-one meetings with me and I do one-offs with people, which I rarely do, but that would cost you $2,000 in the real world. So it's a huge value. Okay, let's go to the next question on our list. You're at an event and walk into a room knowing there's a couple persons you don't know and you'd like to invest in your company. What do you say to them? Okay, well, it's kind of funny. I never liked events for this type of thing. They just weren't my thing. But if it was me, and this is interesting enough, it's kind of like the same thing as when you're doing cold emails. Don't oversell would be my first advice. But you've got a very short time period, right? You've got instantly maybe 5 to 7 seconds to get your message across with somebody before they're going to start losing interest. So it's the same thing when you're pitching people. The clock is running the second you meet somebody. So think of it that way. You've got to get to them like that, like super quick. So how do we do this? We tell them immediately. You introduce yourself very quickly. Say, hi, I'm Brett. My company does this. Got one sentence, right? One sentence to tell people, here's the big benefit of what I do. And either they're going to be interested, they'll keep talking to you, or they won't. That's it. That's what I would do. Don't know whether it would work that way, but that's what I would do. So hope that helps. Next question. I have a college friend. He is the CEO of a well-known VC. Cool. How should I approach him? I mean, as a friend or formal if we did not meet for a long time? Well, I would reach out to him. It's a college friend. You haven't seen him, let's say, in 15 years or something like that. Say, hey, again, it's almost like a cold email format, but maybe a little bit better. So you could watch my video tomorrow on cold emails and make me make a couple of adjustments because you already know you. Hey, let's say his name is Bob. I'm just going to make this up. Hey, Bob, long time. Hope you're doing well. I'm now CEO of startup X, and you go right from there into the cold email format of what you're doing, and just explain what you're doing, explain why you're reaching out, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be able to help you. You haven't talked to him in a long time, right? So it's not like there's this friend relationship that you can rely on. So there is that piece of it. And it's going to look a little disingenuous that you haven't talked to him in a while. So it's more businessy than it is friend. So I would approach it that way. Next question. Another excellent question, especially in today's world. Is Silicon Valley the only realistic way to raise funds properly? Or are cities like Miami, Austin, or New York City viable options too? Here in Toronto, there is a VC market too, but it's obviously just much smaller. Fantastic question. The lovely thing is that there are VCs all over the world. So all the cities that you mentioned, Miami, Austin, New York City, all have VCs. If Toronto has VCs too, fantastic. I always believe, by the way, geographically, you should start in your own neighborhood first. So if there are VCs in Toronto that invest in companies like yours, you got a better chance of success in Toronto. Now, if you can't get somebody to invest in Toronto, well, then you've got the East Coast, right? You've got New York, Boston. There's a lot of VCs in Boston that might be interested in investing in your company. I don't know what else there is, going on in Canada, whether because Toronto's the biggest city in Canada, so I don't know what else there is, but I would look around where you are, as close in proximity as you can, because that actually, in some senses, is going to be easier than the Silicon Valley. There are plenty of people out there with money, and there are plenty of people that you can raise money from. In fact, interestingly enough, I'm in the Silicon Valley, and when I raised the second round of funding for my company, and the Valley had pretty much turned off from investing in companies like mine, interestingly enough, I raised money from a consortium, a syndicate, a group of investors in Austin. One of my investors was based in Austin. Another one was based in Philadelphia. Third investor was based in New York. Fourth investor was based in Orlando, Florida. That was my syndicate. So you can find people all over the place. That's the point. So fantastic question. I'm glad you asked it, because probably most of our audience is not based here in the Silicon Valley. So you've got plenty of options. You don't have to raise money here. In fact, it's going to be harder for you here because, remember, you're competing with everything that's here. And it's going to be easier for you because investors that are here are going to more likely than not want to invest in companies that are here. It doesn't mean they don't invest out of the Valley, but they're going to prefer to invest here. Okay, next question. Okay, following up on my previous question regarding my platform for robotic assisted surgery, as I am beginning to share my pitch deck, I was told that not having a team on my team slide could be a red flag. I have included myself, the web developers, and mentioned that I will leave an option pool open for future talent. What are your thoughts on pitching without a co-founder or full team? It's an interesting question. I'm sorry, I just need to gather my thoughts for a second in terms of how to answer this properly for you. You are where you are. If you don't have a co-founder, there are plenty of companies that raise money without co-founders. In fact, about 50% of all companies start without a co-founder. So that's not a massive flag. However, if you need a team to execute your plan, then you have to show investors that you're building out a team. And the team that investors care about two pieces of this puzzle, at least I believe they do. One is, what does your executive team look like, or will it look like? And usually early stage startups have tons of holes in the executive team. Maybe it's just a CEO and a co-founder. Maybe the CEO is the technologist and the co-founder is the marketing person, or vice versa. And that would be a typical team that you would see. But there are plenty of holes that you could think about in that team. And then maybe they have some engineers fulfilling the rest of the team. So that's what you would show. that you're going to have an option pool on your team slide. That sounds like a little bit of a tilt for me. I wouldn't be putting it there. The expectation would be that you're going to have an option pool for your team. I don't think you need to say that. It strikes me as that might hurt you a little bit by saying that. It's not necessary. And in fact, investors, if they're interested, will demand that you have, if they give you a term sheet, I can just about guarantee either as a pre-conversation or a post-conversation, they're going to either on the term sheet say there should be an option pool of X% or whatever it is. So that's just a given that you're going to have that. And if you were to say, no, I'm not going to have an option pool, not likely that things are going to go very far. So I hope that helps. Okay, we have time for a few more questions. I feel like the ample supply of funds in California, close to 1 trillion, leads to much better negotiating position for founders. Is that true? No. No, I don't believe that at all, quite honestly, that it's true. So sorry. No, I don't buy that. I think there's a lot of competition for deals. I'm very fortunate in my life that I got to be an entrepreneur in residence inside of a VC fund in San Francisco. And I got to see kind of how investors work, how investors think. And it was very eye-opening for me in terms of how naive I was at that point in my life about how these things go. And you think that it's easy to raise money. And I think most of us do for whatever reason. We think there's like a money tree, and just because you're raising money, they're going to give you money. It's not. And this was the fact. This one thing that I was told was really the thing that changed my thinking and really gave me the insight. And here it is. For every 100 face-to-face meetings a VC or an angel investor will take, they will invest in one company, just one. So I looked at it and I thought to myself, well, for me to raise money, I've got to meet with at least 100 investors to get the odds turned in my favor. Investors meet with tons of companies. Most of them stink and aren't that good. You need to stand out. Many companies never raise a nickel of venture capital and are just fine and are successful. You don't have to raise money from VCs to succeed. Many of you. Some of you will have to, depending upon what your business is. In my case, I had to because there was no way I could get going if I didn't have access to a lot of money. Many of you won't have that problem. So I hope that helps. Okay, next question. I'm living in Helsinki. Do you have guidance for me to how to find an investor? Yeah. Two things I would do. I probably mentioned this in various ways today, but here are the two things that I would do. Number one, use your network. Whatever your network is probably bigger than you think, and start asking everybody that you meet, can you help me? And if they say yes, great, you're off and running. If they say no, ask them, well, do you know anybody who might be able to help me? And I would keep repeating this process again and again and again. First thing I would do. Second thing I would do is my tool of choice. I like Crunchbase.com. I think it has the biggest list of investors worldwide. Use that tool to find investors. There are probably some in Helsinki, my guess. And if not in Helsinki, think about the rest of Europe. You know, that's what I would do. And then you keep expanding out. But your best bets are going to be in Finland. If not in Finland, then in Europe. I hope that helps. Okay, let's go. I'm almost 10 years experience running my small business in my industry. My startup is based on the same industry, self-funded, the seed round over $150,000. I have 2 senior developers and co-founders. Okay, congratulations. Let's go to the next question. Hi, I applied to Y Combinator this week because my VC from Dubai did not work. Okay. My startup was too early to raise $2 million or whatever it might be, even though he asked about my pitch deck to contact me in a couple months. There's no question there. Okay, let's go to the next one since we're running out of time. We're just about ready to launch the beta product. Should I try to gain traction or get 1 to 2 clients and go directly to VCs. Don't have a live and my industry knowledge improve my odds. Does having it live in my industry? Yes, everything improves your odds. Think risk reduction. The more you reduce the risk for investors and yourself, the easier it's going to be to raise money. This is always true. Now, none of these things are 100%. Sometimes people can raise money without revenue. Sometimes people need more revenue. It varies. I did a video on this in terms of how much traction you need. You can watch that on YouTube if you want. It goes through this exact problem in detail. But the more traction you have, the easier it's going to be to raise revenue. That's the basic rule. I don't know in your particular situation what will work and what won't, but you're reducing risk with the more customers, the more revenue you have. Think about it that way. Okay, and then the final part of this question, do I just email every VC I can think of? The thing about VCs is we can scale to 100, we can scale 100x faster, of course. Yes, of course you can. No, don't email every VC you can think of. Be selective because not all investors are created equal. Investors invest based on stage of company. Investors invest based on type of company. Investors invest based on geography. You know, all of these things matter. So for you, you want to take all these things, slice it down to the investors that are possible for you. That's your group. If, you know, again, to go back to this previous example I gave earlier today, if you try and raise money as a software company and you go to healthcare investors, they're not interested. And the converse is true too. So that's the way to think about this. What are the biggest differences in decision criterion for a pre-seed and seed investor? I honestly don't know. It's kind of a little bit of a flippant answer there. Let me think a little bit more critically about what you're asking. I think almost by definition, and there's a lot of overlap because a pre-seed and seed might be the exact same thing. That's kind of why I was thinking, well, I don't know, because, you know, it could be that. But, you know, let's say, you know, if we're trying to raise money, let's say the pre-seed investor is asking for $500,000 in for a seed, not the pre-seed, if you're trying to raise, let's say, $500,000 with a seed investor, and let's say 1.5 million, $500,000 from a pre-seed, 1.5 million from a seed, or 2 million or 3 million. The seed investor, again, the larger the amount of money, the more they're going to expect in terms of traction, in terms of team, in terms of where you are executing your plan. That's going to be the contrast between the two. If it's earlier, there's going to be less than I'm going to expect. I'm going to take more risk. Both investors, because you're so early in terms of the return, which is the other thing that investors look at, is can I make enough money if this company really succeeds for it to be worth my while? So if you're raising that, let's say it's $1 million, nice amount of money, probably the investor is going to want 30x on their money, which means if they're going to invest $1 million, they're hoping, they may not get there, but they're hoping that you have the potential to return them $30 million. If you can't, they're not interested because it's not going to be worth their time. Okay, by the way, keep up the great work. Thank you very much. I sincerely appreciate the comment. Your channel will blow up one day. As my wife would say, one can only hope. Never seen such condensed, no nonsense, clear, articulate knowledge in a channel. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I think you made my day. Very cool. Thank you very much for answering my question. Love the channel. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to drink a little bit of water and we'll see whether there are any other questions in our remaining minute or two that we have with us. If you have questions for me, put them in the chat box on Zoom or Q&A box on Zoom, or you can put them in the chat box on YouTube. And one more plug for my free group, free, lifetime free. Doesn't get any better than that. Zero to pitch. It is absolutely free. There's a link for it below this video. There's a link on my YouTube channel for it. Click there. It's going to pop over to the website. And it's a community for startup CEOs. It's over 1,000 members strong. Get lifetime membership for free. There are courses on there. You get to participate in things like this as well, free pitch deck reviews, which you don't get to participate if you're only in my YouTube audience, only for people there. And you get a community of startup CEOs answering questions every day, and including me. I answer questions just about every day in that group. If you want more than that, you can go to the paid group, Zero to Pitch Gold. $99 a month right now. The price is going to go up in January. Lifetime, if you want it to be not lifetime, but if you want 1 year membership, you can get that for $999. It's a fantastic deal. There are office hours every day where you can actually talk to me, get more value than that, and get a ton out of it. Plus, there are courses on there that are pretty detailed, and you can really, really accelerate the growth of your business by doing that. Okay, let's answer some quick questions here before I go. Okay, let's see. When doing SAFE agreements, do you prefer doing valuation caps or discounts? I think by definition, a SAFE agreement, you have to have both a cap and a discount to it. I believe that's the way SAFE agreements go. You can go to the Y Combinator website. They're the ones who I believe originated SAFE agreements. And they have the form already actually on there, if I'm not mistaken. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But I believe you need a discount and I believe you need a cap. They're two separate things. Next question. I'm going to do these super quick. Preventative health is a tough sell because results aren't instant. Do you have any advice on making long-term health products appealing to customers? Are you saying investors or customers? Because I think they're two separate things. Customers, I hope you know your market. Because if you're asking me, I'm the wrong person. You should know your market. So I'm going to assume you're talking about investors, not customers. So for investors, you are what you are. And there are people that invest in health businesses. There are. I know there are. So you have to find these people and they have to buy into what you're doing. And again, risk reduction. Sometimes it's okay if things take time, but it's risk reduction. What can we do to reduce risk? Be creative about it. Think out of the box. That's my advice. Okay, next question, and probably final question for us today. Perhaps I missed this earlier, but do you offer any one-on-one consulting services before we go to VC market? If so, how can I reach out to you? Yeah, I did actually answer this earlier. Go to my website, brettjfox.com. Go there on the homepage. There is a link on the homepage for exactly this, for one-on-one coaching. You can click there and go there for that link, fill out a form, answer the basic question that I have on that form, and I will get back to you on that. This is by application only to work with me one-on-one. I work with a select small group of people one-on-one. That is one way to go. And as I said, you can also work in the group format as well. Pricing is radically different between the two. I would tell you that. Okay, with that, our time is up today. I want to thank everybody for spending time with me, both my Zoom audience, which is my Zero to Pitch audience, and my audience on YouTube. And as I said, there'll be a video coming out tomorrow. So take care, everybody. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Assuming I can figure out how to stop my video. Bye-bye.